What is up, fantasy people? You are back with the True North Fantasy Pod. I am Trav with my man Tyrell McLaughlin. Ty, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Chilling.
Good, man. Good. I am super excited to be here today. We are, of course, a proud member of the Fantasy Points Media Group, where you can find elite resources, tools, analysis, all of that jazz cabbage at fantasypoints.com. And with our promo code 21 True North 10 in all caps, you can get 10% off of their subscription over there and really reap the benefits of all of the good stuff that's going on over there at Fantasy Points. Um, Ty, we've got some big news on the website front ourselves today. We just dropped a brand new website for True North Fantasy Football, buddy, and we are, needless to say, excited about it.
Yeah, the Fantasy Points Media Group is definitely killing it this time of the year. And for all the DFS people who are flying back into the swing of things, there's nobody better to be following than guys like Scott Barrett, guys like Wes Huber, and even a guy like, Jake Tribby, who we had on recently.
Yeah, definitely stoked about that and emulating the Fantasy Points team. I do have to apologize. We're a little bit late for the show tonight because I was having a little bit of issues. Apparently, my mic doesn't work anymore, so I am on my earbuds today. But we're gonna have a good show nonetheless. Ty, what are we talking about tonight, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to go through a lot of the offseason news, not the offseason, the preseason, I beg your pardon. Some of the news and notes, biggest takeaways that we have going into the regular season here, because drafts are definitely in full swing now that the preseason is officially done, and the roster moves that have obviously come across the last couple of days with all this player movement. We're going to dive into some of the biggest transactions on that front as well. Because there is a lot of fantasy takeaways, not just from the smaller names that get released or move teams, but some of the tea leaves, the smoke signals become clearer for what these teams want to do so far as usage and players and roles and all that stuff. So we can start to glean some of the projections and marry that with what we saw during the preseason and what we're hearing coming out of those teams. So I think we could just kick it off right away with the biggest one, and that's Cam Newton. I think it's pretty amazing that Cam Newton got cut, but at the same time, he is such a big personality, and I think it signals that they're really going to let this kid cook. And when it comes to Mac Jones, and so getting into that, I think it's a good way to let Mac Jones have, like, it's 100% going to be this kid heading into the season. So with that said, Trav, do you think this has to rise all boats in the fantasy harbor for these Patriots skill players, eh?
Yeah, I think the mac and cheese is in the pot, Ty, and it's starting to boil over a little bit. Maybe not into like elite fantasy offense, but I'm definitely a little bit more excited about James White, and I was still kind of on him as a late round running back for sure. I think this could put him up into like top 36 category because you and I were talking a couple days ago about it, and it could have him in line for a little bit more red zone work. I think Mac Jones is probably a safer bet for the dump offs to James White, so that's the guy who I think rises the most. And I think just right behind him is probably Damian Harris with the potential for more red zone work with Cam gone. Cam was taking a bunch of that work, and he put in 11 touchdowns last year. So if we see that Cam was doing that as a fullback at the goal line, Damian Harris could give us double-digit touchdowns this year. So I think he could end up paying off as that running back too that we were hoping for with Sony now gone and then Mac Jones in. I think it's lining up nice for him.
So you do have him in that RB2 range, eh? Like a top 24 guy?
I don't think right inside the top 24. I think it's just outside. I think I'm at like 27 or something like that. But that might be a little bit conservative. I'm going to be touching it up with the last couple of days before the off season to get those ranks in before they lock down. But I think I'll probably have him probably right around the top 24, if not just a little bit outside.
Yeah, I don't think there's no doubt there's a how high is too high, how high could he climb, how high are you willing to select Damian Harris if you're doing a fantasy draft this weekend, because I think he does experience another uptick in value, at least via market perception or whatever. And he's a guy who's already risen in average draft position throughout the offseason with Damian Harris. So I still have him as an RB3. Funny enough, I think I have him sandwiched between the Rams running backs, so Darrell Henderson and
Right.
Sony Michel. Yeah. But I just, it's obvious why I'm not gravitating towards Damian Harris in a draft is just because I want the Myles Gaskin types. I want the Chase Edmond types, the guys who offer that huge upside in the passing game. You know what I mean? And even among the profile of running backs who don't offer that element, like give me Gus Edwards right now, right? So really, it comes down to the pass catching for me, the defined roles in that Patriots backfield, and the fact that I don't really see a range of outcomes where Damian Harris has like a top 10 running back season in PPR leagues, especially. Fair. Yeah. And then James White, is somebody I think you'll get rounds later to your point. And somebody you could go acquire cheap in dynasty leagues, I think. And he's definitely the biggest winner out of all of this, I think. So how high is too high for him? Do you think James White deserves flex considerations all of a sudden? Or is RB3, RB4 range too bold for you?
I think he could be like a top 36 running back. I have him right at around 40 right now. 42 I've got him at specifically, and I think he probably could come up a little bit and be inside that top 36 just with the PPR format and the fact that he's going to be getting a lot of those dump offs. And he had a surprising amount of targets for how insignificant his season seemed last year, but he had some pretty good work in the passing game with Cam Newton. So I think without Cam Newton, I think it's going to be even better. So top 36 is definitely in the range of outcomes. I don't know if I would put top 24. This isn't prime James White days with Tom Brady, one of those elite running back targeters in the fold, but Mac Jones is he's a distributor, man, and that's what this offense needs, I think.
Well, I think that, I don't think the ceiling is there really necessarily with James White. I think he's a high floor play, especially in PPR leagues. And 2018 was a high variance season for him. We can see that from a Tarico and a James White once in a while, but that was also on the back. I think he scored 7 receiving touchdowns that season, and there probably won't be 30 plus passing touchdowns in this offense, even with Cam Newton, Hat Newton going out the door. The one guy also I think we should mention if we're talking about dynasty and how I think James White's an easy buy in that format. Randre Stevenson probably moves up and gets an uptick in value. I remember he had a 2,000-yard JUCO season, one of the best JUCO seasons of all time, really, before landing in Oklahoma and arguably kind of chasing Trey Sermon out of there. And the point is he's a big, massive guy, and if they aren't planning to use him at the goal line or in short yardage situations, I'm not sure how they're going to use him. I keep saying that, but is there anybody beyond the running backs that we should be targeting in this offense? I'm a big proponent of Jacoby Myers. The market has seemingly caught up a little bit over the offseason, and now he's probably likely to experience another bump in market value. And then you also have the 2 most expensive free agent tight ends of 2021, and we will definitely still see a ton of 2 tight end sets in New England. So Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, who are you targeting outside of the running backs in this offense?
Yeah, well, I think what you said for Jacoby, it's just another feather in his cap. We were seeing him be targeted heavily with Cam Newton in the preseason already. And I think with Mac Jones coming in, we just know there's going to be a little bit more accuracy coming from the quarterback position, hopefully. And that bodes well for Jacoby as that slot guy who's going to get some heavy targets, because we've seen that be fruitful for fantasy football before in this New England offense. But to your point about the tight ends, I was already kind of liking Jonnu Smith a little bit with his ability to do it on his own, maybe despite the quarterback play. But I think this bodes really well for Hunter Henry, man. Some of those goal line carries that Cam Newton was going to be taking, like he did last year, like a heavy dose of them. Some of those could turn into red zone targets for Hunter Henry, because I think that's the only avenue really where Hunter Henry is going to pay off for me, was if he puts up that close to double-digit touchdown season. So I think this gives him a better opportunity for that, because when they're down inside the 5, they might try to up some stuff for those tight ends as opposed to just put Cam Newton's head in the pile, So I like it for Hunter Henry as well, as somebody that I could see having that top 10 tight end season now, whereas before I wasn't so much on that. You talk. Yeah. Go. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I don't think there's a lot to still, I think it's still tough if you want to target these Patriots or not add value, because the market is going to be wise. They are going to increase in value in the next couple of weeks when a lot of people's drafts are going to take place. And outside of Jacoby Myers, I'm down to kind of buy high on a Jacoby Myers type, especially in Dynasty, because he has that built in, he's not that expensive. And I think, he could pay off like a wide receiver 3 season, and you're getting for like wide receiver 5 prices right now.
Oh,
and then James White's another really cheap guy that's a way to attach to this offense. And just to circle back, like Mac Jones is, like my quarterback 30 or so in fantasy, because he's just a 0 in the rushing game. You're basically banking on like a handful of high leverage, big time throws per game. You're banking on like hyper efficiency on those shots. Yeah. Downfield.
Yeah, man. So you mentioned Gus the Bus a little bit earlier, so I would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit of JK the Dob Goblin. I'm just going to pour one out for him because a couple weeks ago with Jake Trivy, he was one of my guys, and we just hadn't gotten to it yet on the show. So like I said, we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on that backfield in Baltimore, because it is one that will see a plethora of fantasy points no matter who is in there. So definitely pouring one out for JK Dobbins. Ty, I had JK Dobbins right at around running back 13, previous to the injury. Do you think Gus could reach those heights, or what are your expectations with Gus as the lead back here in Baltimore?
Yeah, I mean, some people's inclination might be, there's 2 guys and you had one guy's, a top 15 guy, and now there's just one guy. How is that guy not a top 15 option? I just don't, that's not the way I necessarily think about things. And just to circle back, like, I cannot believe that, like, this is just a lesson. You see ATN and he's a rookie. Maybe you can excuse why you have ATN in there trying to acclimate to a new offense, whatever. This offense, like, he was in it last year. I just don't see why you have to put him in there. I guess to win your 20th straight preseason game, set the NFL record. Go Baltimore. But clearly, a mistake in my opinion. And they showed that by pulling all their starters like almost immediately after that. And I think that was
wasn't happy either. JK wasn't happy about it.
Like it was against Washington, I think, who played like none of their starters. It was just it was kind of weird. And I think the biggest takeaways here are Lamar Jackson moves up, whatever you think this means for, I'm saying Baltimore's experienced a lot of injuries. We could say right now that Rashad Bateman was placed on the IR. We knew something was coming when Baltimore kept 7 wide receivers on their 53. So that's very interesting. And, there's still Hollywood. He hasn't practiced much this entire offseason. So there's a lot of concerns here, and it could be a very run heavy offense, but I think this team could struggle in like short yardage situations, maybe even down around the goal line. So I don't think there's a lot of winners here throughout the preseason when it comes to Baltimore, who we kind of 3 weeks ago thought was Kansas City's biggest competition in the AFC. And I'd also rail against, how many points do you expect from the running backs behind Lamar Jackson? Because a lot of this was the talent that was JK Dobbins for me, because last year the Ravens only scored the 14th most fantasy points in PPR leagues at the running back position. Like, it is a lot of Lamar that has led to the Ravens smashing NFL records for rushing over the last 2 seasons straight. But there's no doubt that Lamar Jackson also builds in like a ridiculous amount of efficiency, right, for whoever the running back is. And Gus has borderline historic yards per carry numbers among running backs through the first 3 years of their career. It's crazy. We saw also for fantasy what he was able to do down the stretch in 2018 when it basically was all Gus Edwards, you know what I mean? When he was a solid contributor to a lot of league winning fantasy teams, as the running back behind Lamar Jackson, who was bursting onto the scene from weeks 11 on that season. Yeah. With all that said, Trav, he was just an RB2. He wasn't a league winner. He was a solid contributor to a league winning team, is how I phrase that purposely, because he is going in the running back dead zone still in my rankings. And he just doesn't check a lot of the boxes when it comes to what I'm trying to figure out when I'm identifying running backs that will break out in that range. So do I want him over Damian Harris? Yes. Do I want him over Javonte Williams? Probably. Maybe Josh Jacobs. These other running backs that I don't think have huge ceilings because of the pass catching, I will listen to that argument easily. I will understand if you want to take Gus Edwards over any of those running backs. So he's basically just a back end RB2 for me. And another guy similar to Damian Harris, I just don't see having that top 10 upside, despite liking their situation. I also think they're going to add a running back, right? Like, I think it's 100%. Interesting they haven't signed anybody off the scrap heap, because right away I threw out somebody like Jordan Wilkins, who I think would be really interesting because, the Colts kind of have a surplus there with what's his face, Darius Jackson or whatever, kind of having a really, really strong preseason there. So I think that would be interesting. And I just think maybe people are going to overblow the situation a little bit for the running back, especially if it's just Gus Edwards and Justice Hill.
unless Matt Breida gets freed from Buffalo and were to end up in Baltimore, that would have me super excited just for that big play potential that we were kind of hoping for from JK Dobbins. I'm not saying Matt Breida is going to fill those shoes necessarily, but I would just like to see that man get some carries, get some work in an offense that's centered around the run, because I think he's been buried on the depth chart too long, man. He needs to come back to prominence. But to your point, I think like if we're going to draw any positives for anybody, maybe Mark Andrews, because with not from JK Dobbins, sorry, but more so from the Rashad Bateman news, Ty. Mark Andrews is like the big body guy that they have. So red zone targets are coming. Some downfield targets are probably coming for him as well, with Marquise Hollywood Brown out. And we could see a couple flash games from Sammy. So all I'm saying there is just be ready to sell Sammy Watkins if he blows up early this season, and get out on him. As well as this passing game that's probably not going to be putting up big points for the wide receiver position consistently. So I think if anybody's blowing up, especially in a season-long league, I'm probably getting out on that guy in the passing game in Baltimore.
Yeah, and I definitely think this is setting up for another classic Week 1 Sammy Watkins breakout. No doubt about it. DFS totally. Target Sammy Watkins Week 1.
Fooling me six times.
Mark Andrews is 100% another takeaway, yeah, for sure. And, he has been the unequivocal wide receiver 1, per se, in this offense since Lamar Jackson took over in Week 11.
Easily, yeah.
And he's due to experience some touchdown regression. Like, he should have a spike touchdown season this year, I think.
Get your Mark Andrews, folks. I'm going to keep rolling, Ty. We got lots to cover tonight. Lots and lots to cover tonight. Lots of fun stuff. So I'm going to roll through some other ones here. T.Y. Hilton just went on the IR with Chris Ballard saying he should be back sooner rather than later. He had neck surgery. But yeah, Ballard said he should be back sooner rather than later. So it's one of those boomerang IRs where he's going to bounce back and be there probably within the first 8 weeks or whatever. But I'm curious, Ty, does this make you more on to Michael Pittman? Would you want more of him on your teams, would you say? Or is there anybody behind him that you don't mind? Because Zach Pascal, remember, is on the COVID list as well. And I thought he probably would have been the next guy in line if he was healthy. But then you got Michael Strahan or Strachan. I'm not sure exactly how to say it.
It's supposed to be Strahan, but I knew a guy named Cam Strachan. We pronounce it Strachan. So I don't know.
Strachan's like the hockey pronunciation, maybe, because if he's on on the ice, you're calling that guy Strachan. And they also have Paris Campbell coming back from injury as well. So pretty thin depth chart at wide receiver for the Colts.
So Michael Pittman, I think I'll take if he's there. The problem is you have to take him at wide receiver 4 prices, and you can't expect much more from his floor than wide receiver prices. And his ceiling is definitely up for debate. I am definitely out on an island saying that the Colts might have one of the worst passing games in all of football. And I just think this offense might really disappoint if their defense lets down a little bit. So Michael Pittman, I like. But I think he needs a little bit of a confluence of events to give you that wide receiver, that top 24 season. I'm not sure he's the big breakout guy this year. And it might have to be on the back of touchdowns anyways, because you got to think a lot of this deep work might go to Paris Campbell, might go to an outside wide receiver. I do like Michael Strahan as well. So I think that's an interesting name to keep in mind. He's just such a small school guy that, we didn't even give much credit to in the pre-draft process, but definitely a guy I knew who he was. So I think that's very interesting. They also signed somebody we liked from the Chargers organization, and that's Tyron Johnson. So I think we should throw that out there as well. And Kiki Kuti was also brought in, who could definitely maybe serve the Zach Pascal role, which, Paris Campbell ain't going to be out there for 100% snaps. So I think this is going to be kind of a wide receiver by committee approach, but Michael Pittman definitely has the biggest upside. But that upside is that of a possession wide receiver kind of PPR option, in my opinion. So target the run game after all of that. That's definitely what we're targeting in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. I just don't see like the huge upside in any of these guys. I think if anything, it's going to have to be volume driven if these guys are going to produce for fantasy, and top 24 would be far too lofty for me to say for any of these guys. Like if we were on a bold predictions, Epi, and and TY was healthy, I might say TY could finish top 24, but I haven't seen it from Michael Pittman yet where I'm going to go out on that limb necessarily. So I think that was a great assessment of the Colts passing game, Ty, because it might be a bumpier road with that new beat up toy and Carson Wentz coming in there at quarterback. Another veteran wide receiver that's hurt, Ty, is Michael Thomas. He is officially on the PUP list. So true or false here, Marquez Callaway is a top 24 wide receiver while Michael Thomas is out.
I think that's closer to his ceiling than his floor. I think people are very enticed by the deep work that we saw in the preseason, that connection with Jameis. Hopefully we see that. Traquan Smith is obviously a guy he needs to get healthy first and stay healthy. So, Traquan's a guy I really like the talent. We know he has that super 30-point week explosion in his range of outcomes all the time. So I definitely like Traquan Smith still because he's basically free at this time. But I have a harder time getting on board with Marquez Callaway just because the steam is really building. You know what I mean? So where do you have to take him is a big question because in my rankings, he's like a wide receiver 5. So I definitely feel like I'm a little bit lower. Am I willing to take him in like the 13th, 14th round? Sure. Why not? But I'm not taking him over someone like Emmanuel Sanders, for instance. You know what I mean? So yeah, I like him. I like his upside, but I think he might have a different profile of range of outcomes than people are getting. Like he's closer to a Michael Pittman that, whatever you think of Michael Pittman might be what you should think of Marquez Callaway, which is a pretty enticing option attached to Jameis Winston and a Sean Payton expectation. Yeah, he's basically the Michael Thomas, in my opinion, while he's out. He's the guy who's going to be catching these. He's the big guy who's going to be catching these screens. He's going to be going to Marquez Callaway on third down, Jameis is. So I like Marquez Callaway. I just don't know if we can expect these 60-yard bomb touchdown contested catches very often if the Saints are even, in a position to have to take that shot, because I'm not sure they're going to do that very often.
Yeah, they're going to have a much better defense for sure. And I think they're going to try and, limit Jameis's mistakes as much as possible. And I think we're going to get into a bunch of this stuff a little bit later, but I think the guy we might want here might not even be on the team just yet because there is the free agent scrap heap that has to be sifted through.
No Perriman Jameis reunion, though. Perriman has signed. So no Jameis Winston, Brashad Perriman reunion, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But Tony Jones season.
Yeah,
I think
Tony
they're going to
Jones
run the ball a lot. Yeah,
absolutely. So make sure you pick him up. Okay, moving along, Ty. Continuing with the PUP squad. We're going to talk a little. Tariq Cohen is officially on the PUP. Does this do much for you, or does it just kind of solidify the target volume for David Montgomery that we saw towards the back half of last season?
Yeah, I don't think it solidifies that. I think Damian Williams, the assumption of rational coaching is a conversation or a rabbit hole we could go down. Sigmund Bloom's coin term is the assumption of rational coaching, assuming that coaches will do what we think they'll do. I think Damian Williams is somebody that we need to factor in. So like it or lump it. I just don't think David Montgomery moves too much, especially because the writing was kind of on the wall throughout the preseason that this could happen. So does he move ahead of someone like DeAndre Swift, who has, received a lot of negative attention throughout preseason, whereas David Montgomery's experienced some stuff that lifts his value? That's definitely up for debate. I just have all these guys in the same tier, so to speak. And I have them on the wrong side of the running back dead zone cliff, if you will. They're guys that I'm usually targeting, the wide receivers in that range of the draft there.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I have actually, just like you said, I have David Montgomery at running back 15, directly ahead of DeAndre Swift. And David Montgomery is an interesting one because I think for me, he's kind of the definition of being water, because historically we have poo-pooed on David Montgomery a little bit, let's say, but we were just talking the other night, Ty, and we're liking David Montgomery at his price this year. It could be a good year for him in that Chicago offense with Justin Fields hopefully starting sooner rather than later. So yeah, same for me. It doesn't really change much for Montgomery just because I've kind of come around and started liking Montgomery before that. So I think wheels are up there. And the last guy on the go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I just want Damian Williams to be out there one more time. I do think he has I'm not saying he has flex upside, but he's somebody we should definitely pay attention to because that role has existed until Tariq Cohen got hurt last year in season, and they didn't really have that option. Having said that, I definitely think David Montgomery belongs in that third round of fantasy drafts. Yeah. And also that's where Perriman went, I believe, is to Chicago, by the way. Just to throw that out there.
Very good.
And with Tyron Johnson going to where did he go?
Indy?
Yeah, to Indy. I just wanted to also bring up Josh Palmer, Canadian. That's the guy I think we should be targeting as Mike Williams is still, questionable.
Yeah, exactly. Josh Palmer in in Los Angeles is definitely a great last round pick in a deep wide receiver, especially because most of our leagues are start 3 wide receiver attached to Justin Herbert. You just kind of want to go for that. Last guy on the pup squad, David Bakhtiari. It's obviously a big hit to Aaron Rodgers' blindside tie. Do you think it matters much for fantasy football?
Well, there's no doubt that the Packers had just a super elite season in terms of pass protection last year. That was a big part of Aaron Rodgers' success, no doubt about it. But hopefully the scheme can compensate for that. They run a lot of play action, and he can turn his back to the defense, and they can scheme it up. And I have faith in LaFleur to do that. So, it's a hit, no doubt. Is Aaron Rodgers already, in line to experience a shitload of regression? Yes. I've been saying that all offseason that he's already going to regress big time. And, a lot of people will heap a lot of blame on the offensive line regardless. I think we can anticipate that storyline existing throughout the season, but, we'll see how it looks. But yeah, not great that, Bakhtiari is old and unhealthy, and you lost your center Corey Linsley to the Chargers, who we just touched on over the offseason, who's arguably the best center in all of football last year. So that's a tough loss when you lose your center in the interior and your left tackle. Those are 2 anchors on your offensive line. One of the most important elements to a team is the trenches, and everything trickles down from that offensive line. So it's a hit, but it's not going to affect values in fantasy rankings, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. One thing, Ty, that will affect the value of our listeners' fantasy league is Trophy Smack. With our partnership with Trophy Smack, using our promo code TNFF at purchase, if you buy a belt or a trophy, Trophy Smack will include a championship ring free of charge, which is like a $60 value for absolutely free. So use that promo code at Trophy Smack TNFF when you buy a trophy or a belt, and you can really level up your league. We got a lot of drafts coming. I just had one this past weekend, and we're definitely talking about getting some hardware for that league. That's one of my longest standing home leagues. I absolutely crushed that draft. So if any of the boys are listening, suck it. But aside from that, Trophy Smack's just a great place. I also have a belt for my my win in Kings Classic, Ty. I've got a belt on the way to my doorstep, so I'll definitely have that over the shoulder when I get it on the following podcast episode. But Trophy Smack, promo code TNFF, and get a free championship ring with the purchase of a trophy or a belt.
All right. I'm gonna roll right into the 49ers backfield really quick just to touch on them, because Wayne Gallman was released. He's somebody that I had a few shares of in best ball. So is this a bigger win for guys like Raheem Mostert and Trey Sermon, whatever side of the fence you land on in that argument? Or is this just more of a encouraging sign for somebody like Elijah Mitchell, who is all of a sudden the RB3 in a situation that we want running backs from for deep dynasty owners? I don't know.
I think it's a little bit of both, man. I think it is a little bit of both, because I think Gallman was that veteran presence behind Trey Sermon, right? And with Trey Sermon being a rookie, that veteran presence could have crept in for certain situations where he needs to use his football IQ, maybe some blocking and things like that, where Shanahan might have trusted get Gallman a little bit more early in the season, and we wouldn't have seen Trey Sermon maybe have the season that we hoped he would. But I think Gallman being gone just kind of further cements, like, we knew that Sermon was going to get some usage. It just further cements that it's going to be a bit of a tandem between Mostert and Trey Sermon. And then on the flip side, I do think it's good for Elijah Mitchell in that he's definitely, making that roster there with injury. There's a path for him to be huge, relevant. Hasty, Kyle's saying, is the running back 3 there.
I think he's correct. Yeah,
I should have mentioned that. Too. I like Mitchell better. I think this could be like a mini version of Sermon behind Mostert, where Elijah Mitchell is kind of just waiting to take over that role from Hasty, who's been there, where I think Sermon's going to do that to Mostert as well. So I think Elijah Mitchell eventually will jump it. But for those guys, I think it's just a vote of confidence for them that they got Gallman out the door to let them be guys in an offense where the third guy has been productive before. So I don't think at the start of the season it's going to be more of a hit for Hasty or Mitchell to the tune of like 5, maybe 8 touches a game kind of deal. But I think even that, I think it's mostly going to be Sermon and Mostert. So it's good for all of the guys here just because they want to be pieces in this backfield, much like we want to attach to pieces of this backfield.
And I also think this is a vote of confidence for the expected return of Jeff Wilson early to mid-season, because he'll definitely be the clear RB3, if not even higher, or in a defined role as one of the committee backs in this backfield. But I think with Wayne Gallman being released, what I wanted to say is it just creates even more ambiguity for who the best pass catcher is in this backfield. And they were, Shanahan's just always going to use his running backs in the passing game, I think, no matter who the quarterback is. And right now it's looking like it's going to be Jimmy fucking Garoppolo. So he's definitely going to hit the running backs quite a bit, in my opinion. The other guy I wanted to mention was Devontae Freeman, but I think we kind of touched on Tony Jones, but Latavius Murray and Tony Jones. Are you interested in Latavius Murray or Tony Jones as the RB2 for the New Orleans Saints? Because I really do think it is Tony Jones who's the running back 2 there.
Yeah, I think it just could be an ugly split for any secondary touches between both of those guys. Like, I don't know, Latavius, obviously we liked him beforehand, but you can't be on Latavius whatsoever. And then Tony Jones, like, it looks like he's the second guy, but it's really kind of worrisome because I don't know how much Jameis is going to I'm not sure how that offense is going to shake up behind Kamara. I think he's probably the only guy I really want tied down that I think about it. I know you like you some Tony Jones, but I don't think I'm going to be going in on him, especially with such a proven vet behind him as the third guy.
Yeah. So a couple more guys I got here is Jared Doakes was cut. He was a pick for the Miami Dolphins. That leaves a pretty sexy group in Miami in a situation that we kind of covet. Javian Hawkins was cut in Atlanta, a guy who he's not even a has-been. He's a never was at this point. And Reggie Bonifan, I think, was interesting. He was cut, making Chuba Hubbard the very clear RB2 in Carolina. Do any of those situations stick out? Is there any big winners at the higher levels of fantasy drafts among some of those guys who got cut from some of those teams?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, Javian Hawkins, I'm pretty sure that the Falcons right now only have Mike Davis and Quadri Allison on the team. So I know, like, there's a lot of those draft scout truthers that were looking for Javian Hawkins and Jared Doakes to be, like, integral parts, and I definitely could see those paths on both of those teams, but it just didn't necessarily happen for either of them. So I think it's just kind of a good thing for Myles Gaskin and for Mike Davis, but not anything that makes me change my ranking for them or anything. The big thing that I like to see was that Chuba Hubbard is solidified in Carolina as the backup to Christian McCaffrey, because I think just in a situation like last year, heaven forbid that he goes down and gets hurt, but I think they showed some trust in Chuba Hubbard after getting him fairly late in the draft. After that big 2019 season he came back with the down 2020. And I think he's in like a pretty decent spot as one of those guys that could be, one injury away, almost in like the Tony Pollard tier, but maybe not in quite as good an offense, obviously, but kind of similar type deal where you got that horse running back ahead of him, just waiting for an injury. It's just, you don't want to wish it, but Chuba's in a decent spot as a handcuff.
Yeah, and the Jared Doakes one, I think it was pretty obvious. Like, there is 3 really good running backs in Miami who can all play pretty defined roles in Myles Gaskin, Salvin Ahmed, and Malcolm Brown. I actually want shares of all 3 of those guys, and if I'm not drafting them in my home league style drafts, they're going on my watch list right away. And then Javian Hawkins, I just want to point out, he already landed somewhere, I believe the Titans. Don't hold me to that, but I'm pretty sure he landed with the Titans. Speaking of the AFC South, the Jaguars had somewhat of a surprising cut, releasing Colin Johnson. I brought that up in our TNFF group chat. They also cut Philly Dorsett, so I wasn't 100% right about that situation. But long story short, there's been some interesting wide receiver cuts, including the Tyron Johnson one we pointed out. We could have mentioned Josh Palmer here, I guess. But Antonio Gandy Golden was also released for Washington, who had some buzz last season. But it was because of the really good play, I would say, of Dax Milne in the final preseason game, registering the only explosive play in that Ravens game where they lost JK Dobbins. So any of those moves that really stand out to you with Colin Johnson, Tyron Johnson, Antonio Gandy Golden, AGG?
Yeah, well, we talked a little bit about Tyron and how it's good for Josh Palmer. I really like that for him. I think, going to Indy is probably good for Tyron Johnson too, because the opportunity is wide open there, and he was a little bit buried on this depth chart because Jalen Guyton's really good as well. Obviously, they like Josh Palmer, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, blah 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 blah. So I think that could be good for him. I do like the Washington one though. You talked about Dax Milne. I say it Milne, you say Milne. I think it's tomato. Don't really care. But I think that's really notable because I want pieces of this passing game, especially with Ryan Fitzmagic in there. And that team just looks really good. And I'm curious to see how the weapons shake out. And I think he could be a decent little slot option. We got to remember he was being thrown balls from Zach Wilson, and I thought he looked really good at BYU. And I don't know why he wasn't given a little bit more buzz, but we liked him coming out a little bit, and now the opportunity is looking decent because Antonio Gandy Golden was one of those big talent wide receiver speed guys, and with Milne coming in and doing that, they want a specific role. So I think it's a good sign for him. Doesn't really do anything for the other weapons though, and I think it's just good for that guy. And that's about that. I'm not too worried about the Colin Johnson thing because his role as the big downfield, maybe red zone target was already filled by two guys in Jacksonville, in Chark and MJJ.
Yeah, maybe that's a vote of confidence for early season availability for Mr. DJ Chark. Sure. Speaking of availability being the best ability, John Brown, not available usually when he goes to Denver. But I love me some Smokey Brown, and I think getting released by the Raiders might be the best case scenario for his fantasy prospects in 2021. What say you?
Yeah, well, I think I love me some Smokey Brown, and I definitely want to see where he lands. We didn't like the Raiders spot, and so I want to see what happens with Smoke. All right, Ty, you got any final notes on these wideouts here? A couple other cuts here. Royce Freeman was cut as well from the
and Mike Boone on the IR. So the Broncos like their duo at the top of the running back room. I think they signed a running back today as well. I can't remember who.
Mm-hmm. And then Peyton Barber in Washington was also cut just to stick with the Washington football team. And Jarrett Patterson, the rookie, is looking like he's going to be kind of the third string guy who could be behind Antonio Gibson if something happens. So good for him as the rook.
If he didn't drop honestly, people would be drafting Jarrett Patterson if he didn't have some drops there in that final preseason. People love them. Some Jarrett Patterson. That production was off the charts. One of the most productive backs in this running back class. He's just a short little fucker.
Nothing wrong with that, right, Ty?
We got one in the chat. Smokey.
Yeah, Smokey, what's up, buddy? What's going on down there, Smoke? I love you, buddy. So I got a couple more that we're going to get into, Ty, but I do just want to give some love to our friends over at Monkey Knife Fight. We roll into another season with Monkey Knife Fight by our sides, and we couldn't be more thankful. You can get in on all these player props and all these games, and you can go in on a full slate. You can go in on a specific game. Like, it is coming, and we can start making some money with Monkey Knife Fight. So get in there, sign up. We got a promo code TNFF that'll get you an instant match on your first deposit of up to $50. Spend 50, get 50. Play with a hundy. It's lots of fun over there for anyone with any knowledge and skill level. You don't have to be getting into the research or craziness, but you can on our new site, of course, to check out some cool stuff for that. But you don't even have to with Monkey Knife Fight because you can go in and say, this guy, is he going to get 64 yards? Don't think so. I'm going to go with the under option. Boom. You can, double your money or whatever it might be. So get in on Monkey Knife Fight. Promo code is TNFF at your first deposit. Okay, Ty, so we're going to move over to the Big Apple here. We've got some injuries abound there. Kenny Golladay is not looking great. There's always injuries in the wide receiver core in New York. But when we look at Saquon, he's looking good for week one. And then Evan Ingram is actually who I wanted to zero in on because he's looking like he could miss week one. And he's been a guy who I've been touting as one of those, potential top 7 or so tight ends that you can get stinky late. So with that, do you think it's maybe like Sterling Shepard's season or even Kyle Rudolph's season at tight end potentially? Kind of love Saquon more. And do we think he should be getting more love as the potential like top 3, top 5 running back, which he's not being drafted as the last couple weeks?
I think Saquon Barkley is a first round pick in your fantasy draft. I definitely think that. Yeah, the wide receiver room is interesting because that offensive line definitely leaves a lot to be desired, run blocking and especially in the pass blocking departments. But yeah, Evan Ingram, it's trippy because what do you do? Because tight end is such a kind of a wasteland with Ertz sticking in Philly. We're going to touch on another guy in Minnesota in a second. So I don't know. There's not a lot you can say about Evan Ingram, but I don't know if it's not like the deep passing that I'm chasing in Giants land when it comes to where are the fantasy points going to come from in this offense outside of Saquon Barkley. I think there will be explosive plays in the passing game if there's nothing else that Daniel Jones brings. It's a little bit of athleticism with his legs and the deep ball, right? He was actually shockingly good per PFF on passes that traveled 20 plus yards through the air last year. So that doesn't necessarily align with Evan Ingram's skill set. It doesn't not. Like, he can work in the intermediate. He's just not the guy who's going to be going downfield. So I just don't know if it's not going to be a mix of people and schemes. And I just don't know where it's going to come from. But yeah, it is Sterling Shepard season. If you want to come in fourth place in your fantasy league, like I love Sterling Shepard. He's just the most boring fantasy asset. And he just doesn't offer what I'm looking for out of like a wide receiver 5. So I'll just never draft Sterling Shepard, unfortunately. But the target's got to go somewhere in this offense. There's no doubt, because they are going to be playing from behind. As much as I thought a month ago that the Giants winning the AFC least was a really, sharp bet for futures. I've definitely come off that a little bit. So I don't really have a great feel for the Giants. I think it might be another rough season for the G-men, unfortunately. And I think Kenny Golladay will get used when healthy. So that also comes into play. And I think Saquon Barkley could lead this team in targets as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I just don't really want pieces of it, because I see what you're saying about the deep ball, but I think that's probably going to have to come from like Darius Slayton to start off the season with Kenny Golladay being hurt. It remains to be seen if he's going to get in there, but I'm not like taking a shot on Darius Slayton. I'm like you said, I don't want to finish fourth place, so I'm not going after Sterling Shepard. So I think I'm just out, because Daniel Jones has also looked awful. So it's Saquon or bust for me in this passing game. And I just don't think Kenny Golladay is going to be able to build any consistency. Maybe it's decent for Kadarius Toney. Like, maybe he does get a little bit more work as
he's got to get healthy and learn the offense too. Yeah,
totally. So who knows? Just stay away if possible from that Giants passing game, unless you can get maybe Kenny Golladay on like a significant discount because of his potential ailments. We talked Evan Ingram, Ty. We're going to stay in tight end land. We have Chris Herndon sighting, folks. Chris Herndon was traded to the Minnesota Vikings from the New York Jets. It's looking like Irv Smith could potentially miss the opener.
He's out
Minnesota.
4 to 6.
I think he's out big time.
Okay.
Nice. No, I did not see that confirmed.
I will double check that.
No, for sure. So do you think, with that being said, Ty, I can double check that while you answer here. With that being said, do you think Chris Herndon is maybe finally viable in fantasy now that he's at an offense that we can kind of see what it's going to look like?
No. I think I am not that interested in the fourth option in Minnesota's passing game. I think that's a drum I've beat a lot, and it's why I wasn't drafting a lot of Irv Smith, even though I like the talent that is Irv Smith. I like the profile of tight end that he is for fantasy. I just didn't like the situation one bit. So, Minnesota just they're a team that I like a lot, but I like them as a condensed offense right now. Like, I think a lot of this is going to funnel through Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and Dalvin Cook. And I put a tweet out a while ago about, the games that these guys saw 5+ catches and 5+ targets, and these tight ends were just not in that mix.
Yeah, I just saw the news. Yeah, Irv Smith got surgery on a meniscus, and they are preparing for him to miss the entire season. So one guy bites the dust that had some of that upside at the tight end position. So we're weeding through the muck there a little bit, but I don't think, just like you, I don't think we can expect anything other than like a touchdown week here or there from Chris Herndon in that Vikings offense, and it's not when we're attacking.
Well, I also put a tweet out about like it was really crazy outlier efficiency in the red zone when it comes to touchdown rate for the Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins last year really embodied the historic efficient season that quarterbacks had as a position last year. The record-setting year when it comes to scoring in the NFL was kind of it was reflected pretty well by this offense in Minnesota. And so people could even point to, the final foot because Kyle Rudolph's out there. It's not necessarily a 2 tight end committee anymore. People might argue that it could be a one guy thing. And that with Rudolph's sideline for the final 4 weeks last year, Irv Smith did really well, but he also caught like 15 to 20 targets and he scored 3 times. So it's like, do you expect the same efficiency that wasn't there the 4 years before? Like they just smashed their averages in the red zone and on big plays. And I'm just not sure some of that work will be there. And I'm not sure that we want the fourth option in this Minnesota passing game.
Yeah, 100%. The last note that I've got here, Ty, I have to take a little bit of the opposite of a victory lap, so like an L lap or a defeat lap or whatever you.
Well, really quick, Trav, I meant to give you a good shout out for the Mac Jones one. That was a great call. You mocked that pick, and look at Mac Jones go now. He's starting for the Patriots.
Look at us.
That was a big hit in the mock draft. Yeah.
Look at us. But yeah, no, the L that I got to take, and I am happy to wear it, is that Jacob Hollister was cut from the Buffalo Bills. I threw a tweet out there saying that he was the guy that you wanted to own as the tight end for Buffalo, but I was a little bit too steadfast in his corner because I didn't see the tea leaves that were telling me that he was on the roster bubble. Do you think with Jacob Hollister gone as that receiving option for Buffalo, do you think Dawson Knox is maybe getting disrespected a little bit as somebody who could be productive for that team who was hopefully relying on Irv Smith to be one of those breakout tight ends?
Well, I think it's like the scheme is what we love about. I'll put it this way. I have 3 of the Bills wide receivers as some of my highest owned guys in best ball. So I'm really targeting, and Stephon Diggs is somebody I have all over the place as well. So I just want the wide receivers. I don't necessarily want the tight end in Bills Nation. They scored like 9 points per game in PPR as a position last year, bottom 5 in tight end PPR scoring from the Bills. And we saw a similar complex with the running backs there. So the short targets are just not there by design because you have Josh Allen going deep, you have play action working, you have shots taken, and you have extended plays, and Josh Allen pulling the ball down and running, which is really, he's one of the best scramblers we've ever seen. So, I think we're more likely to see 50 plus PPR points combined by wide receivers per game in Buffalo again in 2021 than we are to see 10 points per game scored by the tight end position in Buffalo. So as much as I like Dawson Knox in like the 20 plus rounds in an FFPC draft in best ball season, he's just not somebody now that we're switching gears to redraft in 2021 and even dynasty. He's just not somebody that I'm necessarily all over. Maybe in dynasty, I would, I'm a little bit higher, but for redraft, I'm just kind of off of him. Yeah.
Totally. He's a guy that you just stream it up off the waiver wire if you see that he's doing all right.
And speaking of Bills, tight ends gone, Tyler Croft, I think, deserves a mention. Like he could be a better streamer than Dawson Knox this season just because of situation.
Totally. And look out for the young man, Kenny Yeboah, as a tight end for the Jets as well. Super athletic guy. I don't think he's going to take over that Croft spot because Croft can actually block, and I don't think Kenny Yeboah has that. But he's a big athletic boy, and I liked him coming out in the process. I thought there was some good under-the-radar athletic tight ends in this class, and Kenny Yeboah was one of them.
Totally. So I was thinking maybe we could run through some of these situations just to close out the show tonight and look at who we should be keeping our eyes on when it comes to who's going to be adding from the scrap heap, who could even be in trade talks and negotiations to acquire some players from teams who have surpluses at specific positions. So what about the Ravens adding a running back? Do you think that running back will be of consequence, or do you kind of trust some of the comments we've heard over the last 48 hours pertaining to Gus Edwards being the guy in Baltimore?
Yeah, well, I think they still wanted to have a secondary guy, right? Like I was still expecting Gus to give you those customary 700, between 700 and 800 rushing yards that he's given you the last couple of years. So I think they want somebody to get some of that. And I don't think they're going to rely on Justice Hill for that. So I think it could be somebody of like, mediocre consequence side, not, as like mediocre for the scrap heap, but I don't think it's going to be anybody who's going to jump Gus on that depth chart. But I think the guy could surprise and give you some good flex weeks, whoever it might be, for sure.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the teams that obviously wants to run the ball more than any other team. They definitely have over the last couple of years. So they want also multiple backs at their disposal, and they also want multiple running backs, dressed on game day.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
A little frog in your throat there.
Yeah, my bad. It must be
frog in your throat.
That's kind of how I think the Chargers RB2 is shaped up. Like Justin Jackson has been a little bit banged up. Water is wet. Larry Roundtree and Joshua Kelly have had a somewhat of a battle. I think Roundtree's kind of won that battle, in my opinion. But do you think the Chargers are somebody who could just come in and spoil that party for deep dynasty owners for the RB2? And how much work do you think that guy gets? Because it seems like maybe this is all just another boon for Austin Eckler.
I think it's just that, Ty. And shout out to Austin Eckler, brand new fantasy analyst, by the way. He's got a show with Liz Loza on Yahoo. So that's very, very cool that he's kind of getting into the fantasy football world as an analyst, because he'll bring a really unique perspective for sure. But I think it's just good for Austin Eckler, because I think if they were going to bring in somebody who's going to be of consequence, they probably would have done it by now, because you said Justin Jackson was hurt and water is wet. Joshua Kelly's been ineffective and water is wet. We liked him. We liked him early last year because of the opportunity being there, and he popped it a little bit in the preseason, but it ain't going to happen. Larry Roundtree's kind of that big guy, so he could take a little bit of red zone work, but I think it's Austin Eckler's show, man. I just think they would have brought somebody in by now if they wanted somebody to be a big part behind Eckler. But I think we could see those 200-plus carries from Eckler that I wasn't necessarily on previous, Ty. So the chips have fallen very nicely for Eckler.
So the Falcons, what are the Falcons doing? Mike Davis is going to see 400 carries then, eh?
Yeah, 400 carries and probably 150 targets. And he's going to be the running back one for sure. No, man, I don't know. I think they are probably one of the biggest bets to bring somebody in. Like a Gallman would be pretty slick there. I could see Royce Freeman going there as somebody with some size as well. So I think they're going to definitely bring in someone of consequence, actually. I don't think Quadri Olson is it. Just big, but doesn't really give you a whole bunch of explosiveness necessarily. So I think the guy that comes in could be a decent little backup second fiddle to Mike Davis, who we love, but let's be honest, he's not going to be the long-term option. Neither is the scrap heap guy. So I think they might want whoever's being effective to be on the field. So we'll see who the name is, but I don't think it's going to, take Mike Davis off his perch, but I think the guy could be usable from time to time.
Yeah, I think they need like an explosive early down guy out. Like they need this outside zone schemes, Raheem Mostert or Ty Johnson or whatever. They need an explosive guy on early downs, I think, to spell Mike Davis. And I think they could also use a pass catching back, to come in if Mike Davis is dead tired and it's a passing situation.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do in that? I just don't know if Quadri Olson can do anything other than convert a 3rd and 1. Like, I really don't know what. I don't hate Quadri Olson. I'm just saying I don't know what his upside really is.
Totally.
Even from a real life roster, I just think he's a dying art. Is there any other teams you can think of that you're really wondering about running backs? Like you think this story isn't finished yet?
I think you could point to the Dolphins, but you've made really good cases about those other guys being solidified. I think the only reason you point to the Dolphins is because they don't have like a big name, you know what I mean? Or somebody who's given us that 1,200-yard season. I think that's the only reason somebody would be pointing to them, because the tangible evidence says that they think the guys that are on the team already are going to be effective. So that's one of the other teams that I would point to. How about you? You got any?
No, not really. I mean, I was going to whip into these wide receivers anyway. I want to just, try and get this in under an hour tonight. So the Ravens, do you think they come in and add a wide receiver? And what do you think that does to someone like Hollywood Brown? Or do you think Hollywood Brown is somebody that wins out of all this as well?
I think if he can get back on the field, he's definitely going to be a winner. We talked about it a little bit as well. Sammy Watkins could be a little bit of a winner early season, but, get off that ship before it sinks. It's just, Hollywood if he's healthy, and Mark Andrews for me. And I don't really think they're going to add necessarily, just because, they got Tylan Wallace, who's also there. And it would be like a low-level guy to fill out that 4th spot on the depth chart, but I think they're going to kind of wait for Marquise Hollywood Brown to get healthy and do a little Sammy Watkins.
What about the Colts? They're pretty, they made the ads of Tyron Johnson, Kiki Cootie. Do you think they try and like trade for a wide receiver because they are a division favorite? You know what I mean? They have the rivals with the Titans who went out and got Julio Jones.
Yeah,
So,
man.
do you think they have any aspiration to go trade for like a Brandon Cooks or something crazy?
It would have to be a name like that. They're not going to trade for like a mid-level wide receiver. It's going to have to be a big name who profiles as somebody that can be the top target for this team. Because they had the vote of confidence for T.Y.'s injury situation, saying that he could be back sooner than later, and they went up and got Tyron Johnson, just kind of shows that they don't need to make a trade for that mid-level guy when they already got him. And Tyron Johnson's young and big and fast too, and like he's a good player. So I actually like him more than someone they would go, unless they did go for a big name like a Brandon Cooks. But I think they're pretty set for the Colts.
So speaking of wide receiver big trades and Brandon Cooks, what about the Saints along the same lines? A team who is going to be competitive this year.
Reunited would feel so good, I think. Especially with Jameis in there. I think Brandon Cooks would look really good there.
Shout out to Jimbo. You wouldn't have to pay as much as you got for him once upon a time.
Very, very nice. I like that. What's their draft capital situation like? They're one of those teams who always kind of trades away.
The Saints, I don't believe they have their first rounder. That's a good point, yeah.
So it'd be a tough little one to pull off for the Texans, who would definitely be looking for that in return for Brandon Cooks. But Mickey Loomis has pulled off weirder trades than that, that's for sure. So he could probably find some way to make it happen. If it does happen, I'm all in.
Oh, they do have their first round pick in 2022.
Good for you, Mickey Loomis. Well done. So it could happen, right? They're on that title push. It depends, though. This isn't Drew Brees, right? This is Jameis Winston. So it really depends on whether they think Brandon Cooks could put them over the top. Whereas with Drew Brees in that offense, if they're going for that final push, I could see them maybe trying to invest that. But do they think they're going to win a Super Bowl with Jameis Winston? It's hard to say. Is he the long-term answer? Then go for it. Is he maybe not? Then it's kind of hard.
I definitely think that division's more up for grabs than people want to admit, I would say, with the Buccaneers.
Yeah, no, 100%. But that's hitching a lot of wagons to Jameis being your starting quarterback when you weren't quite sure up until like 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah. Any other teams you want to highlight when it comes to wide receivers? Seahawks, any team like that? Your Eagles, maybe? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles are always in the mix for a friggin' wide receiver. They just cut Travis Fulgham and kept JJ Arcega-Whiteside on the roster. So hopefully that just bodes well for the running game with JJ Arcega-Whiteside being a big boy who can block. He actually did moss some fool in the preseason, so I will give him that, but that's the only praise that you'll hear from me towards J-Jaw. I don't know, man. I think it's kind of lower level guys, and I'm not really going to be that interested in any of these guys that sign, but there'll be some flying around, I'm sure.
Totally. I like the Cardinals too, just as another team. And the Panthers, like as teams to target some wide receivers from. Like the Cardinals, if they don't pick anyone up, like you have Rondell Moore and Nuke Hopkins, Christian Kirk as well. Like these guys are going at values, I think, when you think of the play volume and the efficiency we could see. And then the Panthers cut David Moore. So I think just another shout out to Terrace Marshall. Is he the fourth option in a Sam Darnold passing game? Yes, but man, is he talented, and they really like him apparently with David Moore just straight up getting cut. I was surprised about that.
Yeah, so was I. Yeah, just that's a good point, Ty. These are teams that put a lot of wide receivers on the field a lot of the time. So those are the ones you will want to monitor when they bring these mid to low level guys. To your point about the Cardinals, they did cut Keyshawn Johnson as well. So, Andy Isabella is forever in the abyss of whatever he's in. So
I thought he could have got cut for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So, I like that Cardinals call out, Ty.
And anything like that we should probably hit before we get out of here, because I think actually Tyron Johnson, I read on my phone, went to the Jaguars. So
the Jags, not the Colts.
Tyron, not Colin. So Tyron over Colin now. Cowboys signed your boy Corey Clement.
Holy,
so irrelevant. There's something else I saw and I totally forget. Oh, N'Keal Harry to IR, another piece of irrelevant. Right. News, Anthony McFarland in Pittsburgh to the IR. So actually, I hate to say this, but what's his face?
Benny
from Miami. No, from Miami. I think he's the back to own in like monitor on your watch list. Kalen Balaj is the guy to monitor. And the Saints are losing their home opener. Like, they won't be playing that home game, obviously. That was news today. They'll be playing their first home game, that Packers-Saints game. That was supposed to be a New Orleans home game, will be played in Jacksonville. Kadarrell Hodge went to the Lions.
That's right.
That's a decent one. I do like Kadarrell Hodge. Always a guy I've had a little bit of a crush on. But yeah, I think that's about all I saw before we head out. Miles Boykin to the IR.
Yeah, needless to say, like, stuff has been happening since we came on the air, so just keep an eye on that stuff. There's going to be some little trickle-down effect from these cuts with some of these guys signing, and they could be significant down the stretch potentially later in the season, giving you some spike weeks on your roster. So definitely some good things to keep an eye on. The only other thing I want to talk about, Ty, is that website that we dropped. We are at the hour mark, and I don't want to go too long, but I really want everybody to go and check out that new website. It has been an adventure to build. It's got a ton of good stuff, from articles, rankings, podcasts. We got a bunch of data on there from yourself, Ty, so I appreciate you digging through all of that stuff for us to beef up the resources that we offer on the site. We got Joe's auction draft survival kit, and then we also have the Sons of DFS content is hosted on the site as well. So we're really excited. Dan Brown, Nate Williams hosting the brand new DFS content for True North called the SODFS, and that will be premiering tomorrow night. The debut is tomorrow, September the 2nd. So real big shout out to them, and you can find all that stuff on the site as well. And we're doing a launch giveaway. Go in there. There's a contact form. Let us know what you think. Give us some feedback on stuff you liked, maybe something that you'd like to see from us, and we would be happy to check that out. And if you do, you will get entered into a draw to win a piece of True North swag, so a True North tee from Viridian Global. Shout out to them. So get in there, let us know what you think, and you'll get entered for a draw. We're going to draw that at the end of week 1, so there is still some time. We're letting this launch breathe. Go in there, cruise around, check it out, and let us know what you think. But yeah, until next week, Ty, next week is week 1. We will be prepping you for week 1, and we are stoked about that. So any parting shots for the people, brother?
No, I think we're going to try and rip out some bold predictions and some fun things this week, whether it's solo work or some stuff from the TNFF crew. We'll see. But definitely want to get some stuff out before the season. Definitely going to fire the Twitter machine back up in quick order here. The Instagram, I got to get that going, Trav. And for the data on the site, everything on this new website is so great. I'm so happy that it's kind of the combination of this amazing team that you've built from, the ground up of clay with your bare hands, our Lord and Sealer. But the data, as far as the data goes, people need to reach out to us and let us know what you guys are looking for when it comes to data on fantasy football websites, because that's what we want to provide, is what people are actually looking for, not stuff that you have to really search through and dig through. So the data is very much in its infancy in there, but it will be rolled out slowly across the season and raring to go over next off season.
Yeah.
But yeah, we want the feedback on that side of what people are looking for. But other than that, people should definitely be all over this website, using the rankings, using all the, all the information, all the content when it comes to the podcast network that's on there. And you will do just fine with your fantasy drafts coming up over the next week or so.
Absolutely. Yeah. So TrueNorthFFB.com. You can also find us on Twitter at TrueNorthFFB. The pod account is at TNFFpod. And you know where to find Ty and myself. So until next week, football is coming. We are so stoked. Definitely go check out fantasypoints.com. Promo code's at the bottom of the video there. Super big thanks to them. We're excited about that. There might be a big mega stream happening for the Fantasy Points Media Group as well. So keep an eye and follow the Fantasy Points social media channels. But yeah, until next week, it's almost here, guys. Peace.